Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the January 27th, 2020 meeting of the Faribault Public Schools School Board. At this time, Ms. Treadway, clerk, would you determine if we have a quorum present?
We do.
We have four out of 6. We do have a quorum
Yes.
present. With that, would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. At this time, item 2 is approval of the agenda. Board members, entertaining motion for approval of the agenda as listed. Before I have that motion, though, I wish to add one under item 4. And that is, we'll add item 4C. Julia Jellin, the District 1, our District Health Coordinator, going to present Bobby Sumner and some other members of the hospital auxiliary for recognition. So we'll add that for 4C.
Motion to approve agenda as proposed.
Thank you, Ms. Marthaler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Any discussion? Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 3 is community comment. Anyone wish to come forward and the 3-minute limit on community comment? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4. Recognition awards presentations. 4A. We have post-election analysis. Don Lifto from Baker Tilly and Mr. Sesker, if you would introduce, please.
Yeah, Mr. Lifto is, or Dr. Lifto has been part of a research part of the state. I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. That helps with the elections and the process that you go by, and a lot of support tools to help schools make decisions, given a lot of data for a lot of different segues. One of the things that he does also, or that his Baker Tilly does also, is to do a post-election analysis. And we do have a referendum coming up in 3 years to renew, and we just passed a referendum recently, and it might be okay to get some of that data to see what groups came and voted, which ones didn't, and so on, so that in 3 years down the road you can start strategizing again for the next election. So Don's going to explain that a little bit more in detail, and he's here to answer some questions for you. So take it away, Don.
Thank you, Superintendent Sesker. It's always great to be back in Faribault. I grew up in Red Wing, and back in those days, Red Wing and Faribault were big rivals in the Big 9 conference. And my buddies and I spent more than one Friday night in Faribault over the years, a teen dance or some other event over here, so it's great to be back. When Todd talks about data and a post-election analysis, I want to talk a little bit to help you better understand what it is, why school districts do them, and how they can be helpful moving forward for your planning. A post-election analysis of the type done by Baker Tilly is done both after successful and unsuccessful referenda. And essentially what it's intending to do is find out to what extent the district was able to reach different types of voters, different demographic groups, causing them to turn out and cast a ballot in that referendum. We begin with a very detailed analysis of all of the demography within your registered voter file. How many men, how many women, how many young people, how many old people, how many parents, non-parents, etc. We also look at it by ward or precinct and a half a dozen other demographic characteristics. Once we have our count, then we go into a particular database following an election, again, whether that would be a successful or unsuccessful, to find out what was the demography of the group that showed up and cast a ballot, and also what was the demography of folks who didn't show up. And so that's essentially a post-election analysis. If I say PEA during my brief presentation, it's the same thing, post-election analysis. The board received a very brief two-page flyer in your board materials, basically explaining what it is, how it's done, and I'm going to be hitting just a few of the high points from that. The last post-election analysis that Baker Tilly did for Faribault was after your 2017 referendum, which, as we know, was unsuccessful. And so what did we learn from that? We learned a lot, but I'm just going to hit a few of the high points. First of all, at the time the election took place, there were approximately 15,100 registered voters within the district. The turnout in that 2017 election was 35%. That's right in the range of what we consider normal in an odd year election. In a 2017, most of the districts were in the 25 to 40% in terms of turnout, so you're right in that normal range. In terms of their vote count, 27% supported the proposal in 2017. We also learned from the post-election analysis that Faribault is somewhat of an aging community, not drastically, but to give you an idea of what the numbers look like, 44% of registered voters are 55 or older, as compared to 38%, 18 to 44. So, a plurality of the registered voters are in that 55 and up range. I'm often asked, well, what about parents who are registered voters? What proportion are they of all registered voters? In your case, the answer is 18%. Now, this is not a head count of all parents as compared to all residents of Faribault. It's registered to vote parents as a proportion of registered voters. So 18% is your number. Now, how does that compare? You're right in the middle of the normal range. 90+% of school districts, parents represent 15 to 20% of registered voters. So it's not surprising that referenda are a bit of a challenge, just giving those numbers. In terms of the people who showed up in that November 2017, 22% of the people who came and voted had voted in the previous at least 6 out of the last 9 elections. So we called them very frequent voters. So 22% were very frequent voters. 34% are very infrequent voters, meaning 0, 1, or 2 out of the last 9 elections. But when we actually opened the ballot box and counted the ballots, 56% of the ballots were from very frequent voters. So again, even though they're 24% of the population, they were 56% of the ballots in the ballot box. So that was dominated by very, very active voters. Turnout in 2017 was weak among parents, coming in at about 17%. It's always hard to understand how could that be when the parents are the ones other than students who benefit the greatest when these are successful, but that's what it was. So as we shift gears from 2017 to 2018, what can we learn by doing a post-election analysis of your last referendum in 2019? To help you get a sense of what districts do with that kind of information, I put an article, I gave an article to your superintendent called By the Numbers, which talked about the North Branch situation. And in their district, in 2016, they lost a $62 million referendum by 125 votes. So 62 million they lost by 125 votes. They came back exactly a year later and won a $70 million referendum, so 8 million more as compared to the one they lost the year before. They did lots of different things to affect the outcome of that second election, to get a different outcome as compared to the first. And a lot of it related to what they learned from the post-election analysis of the one they lost. Give you some examples. These are all in that article. Turnout among young parents in the losing election was 19.8%, very close to your 17. Turnout of parents in the winning election 1 year later was 39.4%. So they basically doubled the parent turnout. If they looked at, excuse me, that was for the young parents. If they looked at all parents in the losing election, it was 39%. In the winning election, it improved 46% to 54%. So they did much, much, much better with parent turnout. In terms of their top groups that they were trying to get in the door, who they thought would support them, they more than doubled their turnout in the winning election versus the losing election. So what a post-election analysis can do, again, either after a win or a loss, is essentially provide a roadmap, a picture, a profile of what did a losing election look like from a demographic point of view and a turnout point of view, and how did that differ from what did a winning election look like when we looked at the demography. In your particular case, in your successful referendum, you went from up to 51% support compared to the 27 in the losing election, which was a significant improvement. But how did that happen as it relates to who came to vote and who did not come to vote? The overall turnout was very similar, just a little bit less, but very similar. But chances are the demography was different. And that's what we learned from a post-election analysis. As you plan forward, it doesn't guarantee anything about success in the future. But if you know what the turnout looked like with a losing election and you compare that to what the turnout looked like in a winning election, you can provide a good roadmap and a guideline for what you need to do next time around. And of course, next time around for most districts comes pretty fast. So that's a brief overview of what a post-election analysis is, what it does, the kind of information that you can glean from it. And other than feasibility surveys, which we've done in Faribault 2, this is the kind of work that we do the most to help school districts. So I'll just stop there and see if there are questions.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
I did forward those two documents that Don was talking about, so you'll have those in your email too, and I can certainly get that to you too, Misty, if you need those. Yeah, I think the next step will be to discuss if we want to move forward with a post-election analysis. You might want to ask how much does it cost, things like that. He's here to answer those questions and also maybe what that all entails too. Okay. Maybe I've already answered that rhetorically, right? So do you want to give us some information about the logistics of it, Don? Like the cost estimate and then the time frame that it takes to make this happen?
I didn't bring that with me, but I believe the quote you were given was $4,500.
It is, yep.
And in terms of the process, the first step in the process is we purchase a database that includes demographic information about all registered voters living within the Faribault School District. We then merge other databases into that file, allowing us at the end of the day to look at voters from the point of view of where they live, how long they've been registered as voters in the district, whether they're parents or non-parents, what their age, gender, their past voting history in terms of how many times they've voted. So these databases that we acquire and merge give us the ability then to pull out the people who actually voted and then do that thorough analysis of turnout as I described previously. Right now, we've got a bunch of these that districts are wanting and waiting for, but we're currently waiting for the voter files to be updated. So it usually takes at least a couple months or more before we can get data that's current that includes people who registered and voted in your last referendum.
So with that information, you're waiting for databases to who's currently registered, who's going, is it advantageous for the district to get that information now and all the, as who's voting and how the votes were cast and where and our demographics, et cetera, as compared to maybe a year before? I know you said it, and I know it's gonna sneak up on us quick, but, because we're less than 3 years now. So is it more advantageous for us to do that now or wait a year or so?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you were asking me about doing a survey, a feasibility survey of any kind, I would say wait, because that's time sensitive. With post-election analysis, it's exactly the same report and exactly the same information today as it's going to be 2 years from now. So most districts do it relatively soon after the voter files are up to date, just because it's fresh and it's current, and you can still remember what you did and what you didn't do, and it's just a more meaningful study. And it's not time sensitive, so it doesn't change or get better or get worse with time.
Thank you.
Can I ask another question about the analysis? Does it come with any kind of strategic ideas or ways for us to use the data? This is my first time working with a post-election analysis.
It definitely will be very helpful in that regard. Because you've done one in the past, not only will we do a complete analysis of your most recent referendum, but in the same report, you'll be able to compare apples to apples. What percentage of 18 to 24-year-olds voted in 2017, what percentage voted in 2019. So every demographic factor you'll be able to compare and contrast from one year to the next. And when it comes time, as it will become time, when you're preparing the community for another request, that's an opportunity then to look back at that report and say, you know, we didn't do real well with 18 to 34-year-olds, and I'm just making that up right now. This is what we did in 17, this is what we did in 19. I think we should have a goal to increase that by X, and then you begin talking strategically, how could we do that to improve that turnout?
So probably I'm stating the obvious, so maybe all can just help me, but the information we might get from the post-election analysis might help us set priorities in terms of, for example, Matt Steichen's work with communications and what kind of priorities we set as we work on marketing and communications as well.
Yeah, and when we did the post-election analysis in 2017, we had a couple of different things that we found out. Number one, it was very expensive, and we figured out a tolerance of where this community could live with, and we hit that on the nose, $65 for the first one, and that's exactly where it hit. And then we also learned that we need to improve the image of our school district, and that was one of the reasons why the board hired Matt. And he's done a great job with it, getting the good word about all the different things that are happening that are out there. So we think that that's had an impact. One thing to think about too is when we move forward is if we do a post-election analysis, if you choose to do that now, and then maybe wait a year and a half and then do a survey similar to what we had to see where the community is at that point, that might be a logical sequence of events before the next referendum. The strategies, to answer that other question, the details change, but the strategies for going out and campaigning for a referendum are really pretty much the same. You just different data points and different messages.
Thank you.
Carolyn, you got anything?
No, thank you.
So I think I would recommend, board members, that we, again, bring this up at the work session in February, and and talk about it. And then if we want to do a post-analysis election, bring that up as an agenda item in the business meeting in February, and then we can act upon and go from there.
Great. Good deal.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Lipto. Appreciate it. Drive careful. Yep.
Next, we'll move on to item 4B, which is our communications update from Mr. Matt Steichen.
Hey guys, I have a PowerPoint, so as soon as it shows up, I'll start. There it is. You don't want to miss that front page. So yeah, every 6 months or so, I like to just meet with you guys and tell you what I've been up to. So
Okay.
here's what I've been up to. So what this presentation is going to include is, first of all, our vision statement as it relates to our communications, and then my personal objectives for the communications department, and then instead of telling you absolutely everything I've been doing, I'm just going to kind of give you an update on what's new with what we're doing the last few months or so. Actually, about since the school year started. So, you know, we have our 5 vision statements, and they all have communications aspects to them, but our main communications vision statement is number 5, engage in open and authentic communication and interactions to inform and promote pride within the Faribault education community. So that's my wheelhouse. So my objectives: develop and maintain positive relationships with all stakeholders to strengthen support for the district. Create key messages and talking points to establish the district's voice. Establish brand identity and build on the image and reputation of our district. Maintain proactive media relations to enhance the district's image. And I didn't solicit this quote. This is off the cuff. I'm not above soliciting nice things, but they did say it on their own. So. And then serve as a communications resource for Todd and district administration, helping put messages out, helping with things like our strategic planning as we researched partners for that and help Todd with that part of it. Identify opportunities for public visibility through event participation. There's our Adopt a Highway that I coordinated last year, and another example would be right now I'm working with Riverbend to get a lot of participation for the upcoming fun run and get our sponsorship set up for that. And just overall to foster a sense of pride among members of the school community. So like here we have our students that were shopping for adopting a family over Christmas, and we had a bunch of student groups that did great things there. So promoting those kind of positive things going on in our schools and lifting everybody's spirits. So who are we communicating with? Our audiences, internal and external. So we're working with the media and through the media almost every single day. Our online audiences, our internal audiences, students and staff, and just the Faribault community as a whole. And I won't read this whole thing, but if you want to go online and read, that's the list of stuff I work on. So what's new? I'll cover kind of these few bullet points of the things that I've been working on. So the operating levy communications plan, our continued media blitz, the new newsletter I've been doing the last 5 months, our different ways we've been celebrating our staff, our community engagement, the kindergarten registration we've been working on, and then a few things we've done to revamp the communications, community education catalog. So the operating levy communications, you guys know that kept me pretty busy for a few months there. So it was really important, kind of what you guys were just talking about, adding some new wrinkles to the way we interacted with the community and informed them about the operating levy leading up to last November. So what I worked on in that regard, working with Todd to create a message, overall message, and continued updating that message as we approach the November vote. So we had a landing page that I created for the district website that included all this information, the results of our thought exchange about the 7-period day, our PowerPoint presentation that Todd and I and others gave to internal and external audiences to inform them about the operating levy, the answers to frequently asked questions, mostly about the cost and the benefits of the 7-period day, Spanish and Somali translations, and other voting information and information information about what was going on at the school board meetings as related to the levy, that sort of thing. And then few more things about the levy, creating the 4-page flyer handout to have for different people that are meeting with local groups to inform them, gathering all that information and working to, kind of create a user-friendly way to display all the information about the levy. Social media updates with information, kind of just constantly updating people about progress and what's going on. Administering and delivering levy discussions and helping Todd organize those. And then working with the high school administration, and we did 3 of the live Facebook videos, and you can see that one there got 2,500 views with the students there. And then working with Misty and the other media members at the Daily News. There's an article I wrote and submitted about our trip to Shakopee that got a good response. And then some other stories about local support from city officials and whatnot. And then helping the community understand the roadblocks caused by the 6-period day. And we had a couple of articles like that ran along the way too. And then the communications continued once question 1 passed. So just reaching out to the community to say thank you with Facebook posts and whatnot, updating our website with press release about the information about the passing of the levy, and then updating the community through my column in the Daily News about the progress of instituting the 7-period day. And that is something we'll continue, obviously, as we get the classes figured out, what that'll look like, and we'll have a nice lead up of information going out to the community about the 7-period day as we get to next fall. And then the other media blitz continued. Our Facebook followers continued to climb. We were at 5,700 when I started in June of 18, and our pages are at 9,400 now. And we launched an Instagram page, which 6 months ago when I talked to you guys, said one of our goals was to start an Instagram page, and we're almost up to 400 followers now. And that's from 0, so that those first few hundred take a little bit to get the ball rolling, but hopefully that'll be gaining speed too. And then another thing I started was our monthly staff column. So in addition to just me writing articles and submitting them, I'm working with our different leaders at the different buildings and our different coordinators to submit every other week a column for the Daily News that cover a variety of topics in our schools. And then I started doing the Around 656 newsletter. I really wanted to do something printed out and mail it around the district, but that's just very expensive to do. So we negotiated, kind of settled for an online newsletter, but it's better than nothing. So we're using that to reach a lot of people. Every month, that goes out to 7,000 students and parents through Infinite Campus, 800 or so in the district-wide news, and that's via email, and then another 1,000 or so view it through Facebook. And it's on our website all the time, and you can go look at back issues and stuff. So that just kind of covers all the good news going on, students and staff in our school district. And celebrating staff. So I've been doing staff spotlights every couple of weeks at each building. I've been using them in 4 different places, so it's just kind of a profile of staff celebrating, informing people about them and celebrating their work. So they go on Facebook, they go on the front pages of our websites, use them in the online newsletter, and I submit them to the Daily News. They've been appearing in there as well. So we're getting a lot of mileage out of that. And then just other recognition opportunities. These are both from today. It's Thank a Coach or Advisor Week. So last week I interviewed a bunch of students about any coach or advisor they'd like to thank, and we're putting those up all week. And then also it's Paraprofessional Recognition Week. So we sent out a message today, and we're going to have features on paraprofessionals around the district every day this week too. And then just in general, informing the community about everything our students do and our staff do that isn't in the classroom. Because it's easy to think, oh, school, they go to school and that's what school is. But our students really do so much more than that, and these are just some random examples of all the different things that they do that are so much more than just going to school. Another community engagement item, we started sending these thank you letters. So anyone that works for the district that wants to thank someone who came and gave a lecture at their classroom, or if the fire truck came and visited the students over summer steam or something, a teacher can submit a thank you request, and And so I, worked with Todd to just put together a nice letter and, on the district letterhead and send it to people, and it's gotten a really positive response. People like to know that they're appreciated. So this is just an example. The photography studio got their thank you letter and posted it online, and it got 85 likes and hearts and 21 comments. And so it's just kind of showing that our school district's appreciative and spreading positive things. Just started with kindergarten registration. That's just opening up now online. So that's first thing is a poster that's up at all the schools in different places in town. The top one is the front landing page that links to the online registration page on our websites. And then that is the KFC digital board has a thing up. And then that's the letter that's gonna go home to all incoming kindergarten parents from our principals at each elementary school. And then this is a few months ago already, but we just added a few elements to the community ed catalog to make it a back-to-school / community ed catalog, and that was another compromise since I couldn't get my own newsletter. I just started putting district news in the community ed catalog. Anne-Marie appreciates that. So we just like a best of 2018-19 and did some features of the good things happening in the district, a letter from Todd, a picture of our district leadership, because we didn't have anything in there like that. Meeting our school board, so you guys get some FaceTime. A list of our staff award winners. We had lots of staff win things. And then just some features that we'd used elsewhere about the programs at the high school or the Lincoln Cares. Every school had its own feature article kind of sprinkled into the catalog. And then we're doing all these things because we want to help kids achieve great things. And our communications support that by engaging parents and guardians, building community credibility, encouraging students and staff, and celebrating their accomplishments. When students are inspired and supported by their families and community, they have a greater chance to succeed. And I would say as we work on our strategic planning stuff, communications isn't something like that has a finish line. It's going to be an ongoing thing to continue to garner support for the district. So as we develop our new mission and vision statements and all that, I think continuing to focus on communications is going to be really important. And that's all I got. Any questions?
Matt, I'd like to thank you for your work, and I would encourage community members to just ask our students, how was your day? What's going on? Because our kids do so many great things, besides our rigorous and high-achieving curriculum, but the things they're doing outside for community outreach, community support. When you ask alumni and current students we have is phenomenal, and it's so important that we get that message out to sell ourselves, because this school district is doing some really, really good things. So thanks for your work. We appreciate it so much.
I'm sorry, we can't afford to send out the around 656. I do want to assure you, though, as you know, I'm an adamant Facebook user, and I post that every time, and I get so many interested people who read it completely. So while it doesn't make it to every home, I would encourage all of us to do the same, because it's excellent. It really is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Matt, I would just reiterate what John said, but I really appreciated your work on the levy. Working on it this time, it was super helpful to have simple, precise messages from the district that we could share when we were out door knocking or doing presentations. So that was excellent. You're an excellent resource for that campaign. And I was thinking along the lines of, can you share that newsletter like on the chamber website or like our stakeholders maybe? I don't know if they ever feature other, I just thought of that as maybe an idea to get out
I can ask.
more. After you, if Carolyn posting on Facebook is probably enough, but.
I'm sure the chamber would be more than happy to.
Yes.
have
Or
a link
the
to it if they'd
diversity
love
coalition, I mean, however you could, wherever you could put it.
Great suggestion. Excellent. Anyone have anything else?
No, I agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Matt. Moving on to our edition of 4C, Julia Jellin, our District Health Coordinator. If you'd come forward and introduce your guests from the Hospital Auxiliary.
They're shy. Well, we had some needs in the health services department that with, everyone's feeling the budget tightening, and we were no exception. So we had some needs that were going to be difficult to fill under the current budget, and we turned to the auxiliary, and the hospital auxiliary at District 1. They were gracious enough to let me come and make a presentation and tell them what needs we could really use being filled by their board. Long story short, they were able to purchase for us and donate 5 new sick beds and 8 new temporal thermometers. These are the infrared type that don't require any touch, so we don't have to buy covers for them anymore, and they're quite accurate. They're very good. And then also 8 new pulse oximeters, which is a good way to measure children's respiratory health when they're in school, for a total cost of about $3,000, and I don't remember, it was well over $3,000. And so we were so delighted that they would make that generous gift to us, and it's going to make a huge difference. Some of those beds have served us well. Apparently they have been around since the 80s, and some of them have been repaired with duct tape and latex-free caulk. So we've made them work, and they've done their job, but now we can retire them, get some really nice new ones. So
We were glad to help.
so,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's fabulous. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Ms. Sumner.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, we'll move on to item 5, which is the consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight consists of the minutes from the December 9th, December 16th, 2019 meetings, and the January 6th, 2020. Employment, additional assignments, and other, and the authorization of payments, transfers, and investments accounts. So entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ingrid. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Discussion? Discussion, anyone? Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, board members. Item 6 is a retirement. So we have the retirement of Don Holtorf, I believe. So motion for the approval of the retirement.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Ms. Marfeller, for the motion. The second by Mr. Ingrid. And any discussion?
I would just commend him for 23 years of service to our district.
Yes. Long time. Greatly appreciated.
Greatly appreciated. Such an important job. Take care of our kids this way. So, very much appreciate it.
Any further discussion? Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move on to item number 7, which is the finance report. Here we go. So I believe we have the Finance Committee minutes. Is Finance Committee any report from Ms. Cavalier?
The Finance Committee was my first Finance Committee, so I'm going to defer to Mr. Sesker for any kind of information.
Not a lot to, you can see that not a lot to approve here tonight, just a few items on there, but pretty standard information for you, sorry, but thanks.
Questions or anything with that? Move on to item number 7 then, our budget, the enrollment report. And I'll turn that over to Mr. Sesker as well.
Yeah, as you can pop it up and see, down another, I think it's 4 or 5 kids, I don't have it in front of me. But again, our average is still okay, but we do want to keep an eye on that enrollment over the years. Traditionally, we've lost kids during the year. Although this last time around, up in the middle school anyways, it was kind of nice to see we gained 11 students, we lost 2. So that was nice to see too, this January. So we'll have another report, hopefully we'll see what happens next time around.
So all in all, throughout for the history, our longitudinal data, we're maintaining that as
Yep.
virtually as we've gone on.
Yeah, and that's
our
kind of
gains
how
and
we
losses.
projected this year too.
Excellent. Item number 2, 7B, number 2 is the financial report. And once again, I will,
Yeah, again, nothing out of the ordinary. Expenditures are in line with the revenues, so we're right on track.
questions or comments, any board members, any of those? And that would coincide with the investment report too, I would assume, Mr. Sesker,
Correct.
same thing, right? Okay, let's move on to 7B3, the gifts and donations. Here, this is a resolution. And so, Resolution 2014, accepting the gifts and donations from the following: Claudia Vanderbo, $150 for a donation for the middle school team's 702 Science Museum field trip. The Lamplighters, $25 donation for the high school choir program for a performance at a lunch meeting on December 3rd, 2019. And Healthy Impact, $2,242 as a donation for student food service delinquent lunch accounts. And Faribault Transportation Company, $2,124, a donation for student food service delinquent lunch accounts. So do we have a motion for accepting Resolution 2014?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Ingrid, and second by Ms. Treadway. Any discussion?
Just again, like to say how grateful we are for the generosity of people in this community for supporting our students in our school district through these kinds of donations.
That's great. Very important. Discussion? Discussion, this is a roll call item, so Ms. Treadway, please.
Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Jason Engbrecht,
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler,
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway, aye. John Bellingham.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. We'll move on to 7C, items reviewed by the Finance Committee, suggested for board approval. The C1 is the fiscal year 2021 budget timeline.
Yeah, and I might, if you have questions on this, I might bring Andrew up to answer those questions for you. Of course, these dates are estimates and they're pretty close to where those dates are, but it should be a pretty solid timeline. But if you have questions, go ahead.
Could we just come up and let's just go over them briefly so everyone has an idea of where we're going and how we're going to get there?
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So we were asked to prepare and present for you guys the budget timeline, just to give you guys something to visualize for a budget timeline. So what you have in front of you is our timeline for the final budget for the current fiscal year we're in, and then the 2021 proposed budget, and that timeline for you there. Mr. Chair, do you want me to go through each individual date, or
Maybe just the highlights of
a couple of
or
highlights?
what you feel are really important. Just, you know,
So the big ones for us is February, which contains our enrollment projections, revenue assumptions, expenditures, and legislative assumptions. That's where we do that projection model for you to see exactly where we're going to end up next year now that we've been given the enrollment that we're going to work with. And then obviously at the end of February on the 25th, on the 24th, where the board will set their budget adjustment target. I think that's the big one right now for our next big deadline. And then throughout March, we'll have our preliminary FY 2021 budget for you. And then on the 6th is where we will send out our notice for staff reductions based upon the previous meetings and where we get with those numbers. And then between April and June, we will finish working together as both the Cabinet, Finance Committee, and Board to get to that final budget that we approve, or final adopted budget that we approve in June.
One of the other additions that we put into the board agenda, you'll notice on 9D, Roman numeral 9, letter D, we added another work session in February, just because we do think it's gonna take a couple shots to make sure that you're comfortable with the suggestions that we have and that you have.
So Andrew, the budget adjustments aren't just budget reductions, it's analyzing what revenue we have coming in with our student numbers, the whole big
Correct.
picture of all that, and then we go from there, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
So then, will the board receive a prioritized list of proposed budget cuts on February 10th, or when will that come?
That is correct. That'll be the first shot at it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and then we'll go to
thanks.
the 18th the following week to look at it again.
So adopting a resolution that gives, with the budget adjustments, does that give the authorization of what revenues we have and how we're, and going forward?
That resolution is mainly for the expenditure piece.
Okay.
The revenues are pretty well set with the enrollment projection that you gave us. So the revenues are pretty well set. We just now have to make the adjustments with the expenditure. So that adoption will be at the regular board meeting, the 24th, sorry, 24th, yep.
Thank you. Yep. Any other questions for Mr. Adams here? Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Next, we have the 7C2 is the Technology Insurance Program proposal.
Mr. Bellingham, it looks like they want us to have a motion to approve the timelines as presented
Oh,
tonight.
I'm sorry.
That's
Here we go.
okay.
I'm in a hurry. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Marthaler. So move for approval of the budget timeline as proposed in board book, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Marthaler.
Second.
Ms. Cavalier, second. Discussion? 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 Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, board members. Now we'll move on to item 7C2, the Technology Insurance Program proposal. And I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Sesker once again.
Yeah, so this was reviewed by the Finance Committee and suggested that we use our technology insurance coverage that will cost $10 per year for the 2021 school year.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, question. Mr. Sesker, I seem to remember that we had a fee before. Is this a change?
It is, and I think I'm going to have Maria, there she
Maria is
is, to come up here and explain that to you.
Our current fees are on a kind of a sliding fee scale. It's either 40, 25, or 15. And this proposal will change everybody to pay $10. And we're hoping to increase participation and make it more equitable for families to participate and get into the repair plan. Right now, families are not in the repair plan. They have to pay for the cost for the damage of the devices.
Okay, thank you. So this would represent a reduction in the cost to families. And the idea is that we might be able to get a higher participation, if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Right.
What is our participation now roughly? Is it half, less, more?
It's about half. Every year, this is our third year. We're going into our third year, and every year it just goes down a little bit each year. Usually, I think families think after 2 years, they haven't had any damage, so then they don't apply again. So we're hoping this will help families that have multiple children. It would just be a flat fee for everyone.
All right, thank you, Maureen.
Any other discussion, questions for Maria? That? So we'll entertain a motion for approval of the technology insurance coverage for $10 for the grades 6 through 12 for the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Cavalier. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Ingret. And do we have any discussion on this again? Discussion? Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain is none. Motion passes. Thank you,
Thanks.
Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
Maria.
7C3, the student enrollment projections. Again, Mr. Sesker.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yep, nope, that's good. Again, if you have any questions, certainly ask Andrew. These were the numbers that the board agreed upon, and this will be driving our revenue. And this will be the revenue that we use when we do our budget.
And these numbers were presented to us at the work session?
That's correct.
That's correct, yeah. Same numbers there, okay. So let's entertain a motion for approval of the student enrollment projections.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Cavalier. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And discussion or questions?
Maybe for the public, could you just announce the number that we're using, John? For all those watching.
So looking at this, this is 3348, correct?
Yep, right, yep. It's a decrease of about 143 students from this current year to next year.
So the number we will be using for
Budget.
budget items will be 3,348.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep, for, yeah, the students that are in our school.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good point to know. Any questions or discussions on the motion? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move over to 7D, the compulsory instruction compliance data report of the homeschool program. This is a report, and once again, I will refer to Superintendent Sesker.
Yep, this is what Kathy does for me each year. It just tells us the categories, as you've probably read them, and we are in charge of producing this data and giving it to MDE on an annual basis. So, and you can read those on there.
What happens if a student is not in compliance?
Kathy?
What that means is I have not received the report from the family for homeschool purposes, and so I follow up with calls, letters. So there are a few that I'm still tracking for this school year.
Are there consequences if they
If
don't submit?
After several attempts and I do not, I cannot get a hold of the family to confirm if they are continuing homeschooling, then we do have to notify the social services and things.
Okay.
Becomes a truancy issue.
It becomes a truancy issue, and they, right.
Any further questions or discussion on the homeschool program report? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, the other committee reports. The District Advisory Committee, Mr. Kerminga.
Thank you, Ryan.
The draft a little bold.
For our advisory report this evening, I wanted to hand out drafts of the calendar, and this is kind of, we have a calendar committee that involves all of our grade levels or banded areas, so elementary, middle school, and high school members. We are meeting again this week, but I wanted a chance to give you some initial preliminary pieces in terms of where we're at with the calendar. You'll see there's 3 sheets here. The first one is the calendar for the 2021 school year. They're all in draft. I don't know if it's big enough, but they're all in draft, so it says draft across everything. Draft. I'm going to say draft again. Okay. There is a 2021 school year year-round draft, potential idea with that running more of what would be a 45-15 model or similar to that. And then there is a 21-22 school year in here as well. The one on the front page, in terms of the committee, we've kind of come to where we're in agreement on almost all pieces there. In The other two, we're still working on some of those drafts, and so we're pulling together this week. Our hope is to have it on February 10th in the work session for us to talk a little bit more of the details that are in here, and then to approve it in our February business meeting. Any questions?
I'm just gonna put one question out there,
Yeah.
just to make sure that you're looking at this. Did you see Labor Day? Yeah.
There,
So, yeah, so we'll,
You-
as we move forward, we'll discuss this whole process
Right.
too. So this is your first glance at it.
You can see that is it before Labor Day start, and also the number is, we're shooting for 171 school days. We reduced one of the curriculum days in exchange for another student contact day, so. But we'll talk in more detail too.
On behalf of families and staff, thank you so much for doing 2 years at a time. I
And
think it's
that
really
is our absolute hope in February, is to come away with approval on 2 years, so that we can not have to come back to it right away,
Thank you.
so.
Anybody else have questions, or?
I'll ask questions. I'll just have to think and ask questions later.
Okay. Something we can review on the 10th. so-
Yeah. This will be on the February 10th agenda
Yes.
for you
Okay.
guys to ask questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan, very much. Our Technology Department report, Ms. Hanson.
So last month, we sent about 15 of our staff of teachers and administrators to the Impact Education Conference. This is a technology conference that they hold each year. And this year, the conference was focused not just on technology, but it included equity and diversity sessions. So our attendees that attended the conference will be sharing some information about the conference and on February 17th during Curriculum Day. So they'll be sharing with staff things that they learned. I'm currently working on our E-rate applications. This is federal funding that we receive for telecommunication costs. And this covers the cost of our internet and our wide area network. It also covers some infrastructure needs in our district. So usually comes about this time every year, and it's a very detailed process. We do accept bids for infrastructure equipment and our internet services. We're in the planning stages of our one-to-one replacement option. The technology committee met earlier this month and drafted a survey for our staff and students. And I wanted to share the results of the survey so far. We just administrated the survey last week. We sent it to our teachers pre-K through 12, and then our students in grades 6 through 12. So one of the first questions we asked our teachers is, has technology made a positive impact on teaching? As you can see, 90% strongly agree or agree that it has made a positive impact on their teaching. We also asked the teachers, this is the teacher response, has technology made a positive impact on student learning? And again, a high percentage strongly agree that it has made an impact on student learning. We asked our students, has the iPad made an impact or helped improve and support your learning? And again, this is 70% strongly agree that it has made a difference in their learning. One of the questions we asked our teachers, if they could choose a one-to-one device for their students, what that device would be. And 51% chose the iPad, 29% chose the Chromebook. And if you look at below, it kind of breaks it down by building. Our lower level grades, our early childhood and elementary favored the iPad. And even our middle school was it was 50% iPad, 39% Chromebook. At our high school and the ALC level, the choice from the teachers was 48% Chromebook. So more teachers at the secondary level, at the high school level, chose Chromebooks. So we asked
Maria,
this.
could I ask a quick
Yeah.
question about that? Would it, looking ahead, because I know we're a year or two away from being able to look at new leasing, would it even be feasible, do you think, from a IT support plan to think about doing both at different levels, iPad and Chromebook?
It's pretty common for most districts to have iPads at the lower level and either a laptop or a Chromebook at the secondary level.
Okay,
yeah.
so this split that we're seeing could, in fact, we could perhaps implement it in that fashion of giving
Yes.
lower levels the iPad if that's where they're still prefer, if that is what they still prefer, and upper levels Chromebook, that doesn't
Yes.
seem unfeasible. Okay.
We could just continue with the iPad like we do now at the lower level grades, and then depending on what device was at the secondary, it would be a little bit different.
Thank you.
We asked the same question to our students, and middle school students and high school students chose the laptop. So this was interesting. I don't know, we'll have to look into it a little bit further. I don't know if they maybe just are not knowing the functions of a Chromebook or the difference between a Chromebook and a laptop. So from the results I looked so far, one of the common reasons is they want a keyboard. They think it's easier to type with a keyboard. They want the larger screen. And some students said that it's for college readiness, just to get them ready for college. Those were most of the common reasons why they chose. Another question we asked students is how many students have Wi-Fi at home? And 94% said yes, they do have Wi-Fi at home, so it's quite a high percentage. This was an interesting question. We asked students, how much time do you spend on iPads outside of the school day? And most of our students, 68%, less than an hour or so a day. And we hear a lot of conversations about screen time and how much screen time students are doing at home. And as you can see, it's really a small percentage of students that are using the iPad over 3 to 4 hours at a time.
I'm curious, what kind of apps are students able to put on their school iPad that they could use at home?
They cannot download any apps. So if they're using devices at home, it's on websites, YouTube, things like that we don't block.
That probably supports the 0 to 1 hour. Thank you.
We asked what subject areas use the iPads daily, and as you can see, a lot of the core subjects, math, science, social studies, and language arts are the classes that use the iPads on a daily basis. And then we asked the students what applications do you use mostly, and Schoology, Campus Student, or Infinite Campus, and the homework and assignments were the most commonly used applications on the iPad. As you can see, Gmail was pretty low, and then apps and research was about the same. So just to summarize, we do have 1 year left on our current iPad lease, and that expires June of 2021. So what we're looking at, hoping to have in place is a replacement plan by the spring of 2021 so that we can be ready for fall distribution. So these are just the beginning results of beginning discussions, but we hope to have continued evaluation and planning with our tech committee and how to move forward.
Maria, thank you for the summary. It was really helpful. And I was thinking along the lines that you were, Jason, if that is worth exploring, having 2 different devices for the different levels, I guess economically and staff-wise, what the feasibility of that would be.
We'll have to do something with the iPads too, because you usually get about 3 to 4 years of battery life. So if we were to continue with that, we would have to look at a replacement plan for those too.
I'm curious, it was one of the early slides, but I think there was indication that vast majority of students really do enjoy using iPads and the technology, but there was, seemed like maybe in the 30% range or whatever that didn't. Do you know, have you heard any feedback about that?
I'd have to go back and look at the reasons. We did ask additional questions like what were the, I think it was what do you like about the iPad and what are your frustrations with the iPad? I'd have to go back and look at those reasons again.
So it could have been that they had a different preference rather for technology as opposed to not liking technology. They may have not appreciated the device they had.
It could be, yes.
Yeah.
Maria, I'd make a couple of comments. I was sort of really struck by the differences between the students and the teachers in terms of what their preferences might be. And I found that really interesting. I don't know that I favor one versus the other at this moment. I think both are so I would hope that the technology committee, as they're looking at potential future options, values both of those inputs, and perhaps instead of obviously putting teachers above the students in terms of preference or vice versa. I think both have some value. I'll also make some comments in particular about what I think the students are commenting on and their reasons for why they might prefer laptops versus others in my own experiences over the last decade or so. As a college professor, seeing students come to college and start to use computers for various things, and also as my high school robotics coach, having students using computers on a regular basis, I absolutely feel like over the last decade, my students' in general abilities with computers has actually gone down. I think there's a perception of young people all being very tech savvy, and that thus if they sit in front of a computer, it's all going to be intuitive. And I would say that over the last decade or so, with the advent of iPhones and iPads and other technology devices that have sort of replaced computers in many cases, that their actual computer knowledge for using it in a professional environment of email or using Microsoft Word and Excel and other sort of general office things, I think as a general rule, not just at the Faribault High School, but my college students that I see coming to St. Olaf, that has gone down. There are many times that I'm at the college and I'm helped. 10 years ago, it would have never occurred to me that I would have to help a student understand the operating system on their computer. They would have all known that. And now, very often, I think I have students who don't understand the file system, where files are saved, where a document is, you know, they save a document and then they couldn't navigate to find it again. So some very basic computer skills that kind of went away when iPads and iPhones supplanted that technology need. And so I don't know that that argues one direction or another, but I do think that when the students talk about college readiness and their skills that they would like to get from a laptop, I actually think that has an awful lot of merit in terms of what I would anecdotally say I've seen over the last decade. That I don't think I've seen our students become more tech savvy. I think they've actually in many ways become less tech savvy over the last decade in a way that's useful to a professional environment. So I hope the technology committee will keep that in mind as you're making decisions.
As a non-tech savvy person, is a Chromebook basically a laptop? Or is that the same?
No.
No, it's not. So you
it's
don't
not.
have the same operating systems that you might learn or adapt. Okay, thank you.
No, and all of these technologies are good technologies. I don't mean to value one over another, but there's no question that computers and laptops are the professional world's tool. iPads really never turned into that. For a decade ago, it looked like maybe everybody will walk around with an iPad. And at my work environment, I don't know about others, iPads kind of came in, and now I don't see them anymore. I see very few of my colleagues coming to meetings with iPads, and a decade ago they did. Laptops are still become the norm, and Chromebooks and other things just haven't come into that. And so I think that's just something to think about. And a lot of this is the keyboard, and it's just sort of the data input environments that are used. And that's going to evolve in the next decade, and I don't know what it will look like either. But something to keep in mind as we're trying to prepare students for their next life. Something to keep in mind.
Marie, at some point, would the parents, would it be worthwhile to survey parents as to what they believe, how the iPads or Chromebooks would be
Yeah.
used? Is that?
We talked about that at the tech committee, and we do have a draft survey done. We just haven't administered yet. We're just kind of looking at a time to do it and a way to do it. We could email it, we could send it home as paper, pencil, but we're just kind of evaluating how we can administer it.
Great.
Yeah.
Any further questions or comments from me?
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, very much. Okay, continuing, we do not have a insurance committee report. We do have a wellness committee report by Ms. Leland.
Is that a laptop or no?
Okay, you don't even want just, great minds think alike, Jason. Thank you. This is an iPad Pro, but I do have all the Office products on it.
Okay, there we go.
Anyway, okay, so, good
And a
evening.
keyboard.
Say that again.
Sorry.
I know, I just put this here. No, okay. So, wellness, we just met last week. It was a good meeting. And tomorrow starts our biometric screening. So, I'm signed up for 8:30. Get to know my cholesterol and all of that good stuff, along with about 70-ish fellow employees. So this will be a good opportunity for all of us to do this again this year. So I'm excited. Other than that, the maple syrup run, we're going to sponsor that again. We're a little bit more, we're contributing a lot more to that run for employees, and it's basically free. Yes, it's free entry. For 5K, and that's through Riverbend Nature Center, so that's a great partnership. That's about it for wellness.
Thank you.
Maybe for members of the public who might be viewing it, if you could delve into a little bit more about how staff and that piece you just explained a little bit there.
For the maple syrup run?
No,
Or the biometric
The
screening?
biometric screening.
Okay, sure. So the biometric screening, and I only know this as a layperson, I'm not a medical person, but what we have through our co-op, so what we have through our employee wellness funding, is the opportunity to work with a consultant that brings down a biometric screening crew. So it's staffed by nurses and other medical folks that will take one by one, and it's very private. It's in this room that happens, and it's also happening at the high school and happening at Roosevelt for staff. But they take your blood and take your other vitals, blood pressure, weight. They do a body mass index and give you just some feedback on the spot around glucose levels, cholesterol levels. There's an option to fast fully in terms of straight fast, so you have results around cholesterol that are not tainted. And then you can also not do a fast. So it's just what you want out of that screening opportunity.
And I believe there's a report, right?
And there's a report that comes back to us.
Right.
That's aggregated. It's not specific to any one employee. There's no names on it or anything, but it informs us of the health of the folks that took the screening. Yeah.
And they get individual reports
And they
as
get,
well,
yes,
too.
we get individual reports, yes, thank you, I should have gone into a little bit more. We get reports back, we log into a portal, so we'll see that in front of us, and then people, of course, are put into a drawing, and they win something, because we love to incentivize this stuff. So that's about, Any other questions?
Are there benefits to the district for participation in this?
There's benefits in the report that comes back, the aggregated report. It can help us, Nicole really has more information about this. I'm sorry to summon Nicole Yoakum up, but she's really the brain behind this operation. Here she comes. Here you go.
Good evening. Hi. So the information that we get back from these reports will give us some nice data on what our focus should be in terms of our staffing health for the next year or forward. So for instance, it will tell us if we have staff that are very stressed out and if we need to make some efforts on trying to relieve that and some sort of, some sort of promotional.
Calming room, like they're doing it.
Calming room, thank you. Some sort of promotional things that we can do as a wellness team to try and alleviate the stress. Maybe we find that we have individuals that have a lot of high cholesterol, and so maybe we need to do some promotion on how to reduce your cholesterol, do some different healthy eating activities, and also really promote our insurance plan and how that can help individuals with whatever issues pop up from the data.
Excellent.
Thanks,
So-
Co-Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Then-
Just remember, she said you're the brains.
Yes, I did. That went on record.
Okay.
Yep.
So Anne Marie, why don't you, we'll just dive right into your report on community education then.
Okay, and just two things. There's so many things to report, but I'll just report on two things. The first, we had a visit from the Department of Education a couple weeks ago for community school. It was actually in December. That's several weeks ago. And we were informed that we will get 3 more years of funding. So that's about $200,000 each year to continue community school efforts at Jefferson and at the middle school. So that brings us to fiscal year '23. So we'll be fully funded through that period of time. In terms of meeting our goals, the number one goal we have in terms of research that benefits students' academic performance and social emotional learning is attending after-school programming 30 times or more. And we're well on our way to meeting our overall goals. We're up from last year, compared to this year from last year. We've got more attendance. The programming is just going really, really smoothly this year. We also have the opportunity to work alongside targeted services, and that after-school programming is in all elementary buildings and at the middle school. So we're trying to provide opportunities across elementary through middle school in terms of after-school programming. And one of the next partnerships is going to be with basketball. We'll have Little Falcons basketball in each of the elementary buildings, and community school will support that. So yeah, it's just a terrific opportunity for our students. The other piece I wanted to talk about was I send out a survey every once in a while to the community ed team and ask them to give examples of accomplishments. Cassie Onstad just reported in from adult education, and I just want to read to you what she wrote. We held a custodial substitute training course led by the Director of Buildings and Grounds, so that's Kane Smith. The class met for 3 weeks. 2 days per week, students learned about the proper ways to clean Faribault Public Schools, and then the other 2 days, they job shadowed certain custodians. On the last day of the class, the students applied as substitutes and completed all the proper paperwork to become employees of Faribault Public Schools. We have 1 student consistently subbing at the high school and 1 subbing at the middle school. And we have one of our star custodians in the audience, Manley. This is correct, Manley? Hello. Nice to have him here. But it's just a great opportunity to kind of build our diverse staff, and we just have tremendous success with these kinds of pathways at adult education. Yeah, it's fun. That's cool. I'll tell you about
Excellent.
Daikin next time.
Great job on the continued funding for community school. That's great news.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Anne Marie.
Yeah.
Next, we have a report, special services, Mr. Dennert. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Okay.
Daynert,
Daynert.
close enough.
I'm sorry.
Go by anything.
Okay.
So I have a graph.
Assembly for supper.
Coincidentally, this is my cholesterol level from the biometric screening. So, yes. I missed my calling as a stand-up comedian, so I apologize for that.
There's still time, Rob.
There is still time. Every year I like to report on the special education December 1st child count. Each year we're required by the Minnesota Department of Education to report how many children we have in special education, and in a number of different ways, by disability, by setting, by resident district. And they use this, you can keep my chart. I like to look at my chart when I'm talking instead of seeing myself, man. So I like to present to the board what those numbers look like. Keep in mind that this is just a snapshot. It's December 1st of every year for the past 4 years, but it's just December 1st. It's just the kids who are enrolled in our district on December 1st and whether or not they have special ed services or not, and what type of special ed services. This graph represents 2 things. The green line is the number of students we actually serve, because we have a number of students who are not served, who are either going to charter schools or who are open enrolled in other districts, who are in our cooperative program. So the green line, 609, are the students that we served on December 1st of this year. 713 represents the total number of students, including, that are counted in our child count, and includes all the students who are open enrolled or are placed in setting 4 placements or who are at the charter schools. For the most part, we've remained relatively, and this goes by year, it starts in 2013 all the way up to 2019. So for the past 4 years, we've hovered above 600, between 600 and 615. Currently, we're at 609, which represents 5 more students served this past December 1st than the year before, similar to the amount of kids who are actually totaled in our district, 713. The thing that I noticed the most is in 2016, there's this huge jump between the kids that we actually serve and the kids who are in our district. That's because we opened the cooperative that year. And so instead of serving those students ourselves, the cooperative serves those students. So that's why there's that big gap. But it's really paralleled, the amount of students we serve and the amount of students who are special ed enrolled in our residents of our district. The next, and this is in your board packet as well. So the next chart I have is a more detailed version of the child count and where it breaks up. And I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'll explain kind of what it looks like, and then the prior year is below that, so you can see so you can make comparisons yourself. For the most part, the numbers I look at are the total child count, which is 713, and that's the total number of students who are residents of Faribault Public Schools. And then I look at the total number that we serve, total served by Faribault, which is 609. It's covered by this little black thing here, but total served is in this column, and it breaks it apart by disability. One thing to note is that the total enrollment from December to December went down 208 students in Faribault Public Schools, but the enrollment of special education went up by 5 students. So I know we talk about kids opening enrolling and leaving the district, and while that is true for the general education population, the special ed population has remained rather steady throughout this time. These are the percentages of each disability. So if we take all the disabilities and you want to know what the high frequency disability is, you can tell right away a specific learning disability, that's the highest number of kids we serve. So that's just a percentage of everything. I also include in the packet where the students are by building. So, and I do that for four separate years, just because it helps me to decipher where our kids are going and whether or not we're bringing in the same amount of kids. So one of the things I look at is McKinley and the preschool and see where those numbers are. Currently, they're at about I can't add up that fast in my head, 89 and 2 and 9. They're about 100 or so. That's about the same as it was last year. Those are the kids who are going to be coming into our system, into our school buildings. And so my hope is that would be a high, robust number, that we're collecting kids there. And then I can look at different buildings. For the most part, when I compare these, we've been mostly static. There's been a little bit of bump at the middle school. The senior high is getting a bigger bump this year, and that's going to continue to grow because we had, when I first started as director, those of you who are on the board remember me saying there's a bump of kids coming through the middle school. Now that bump of kids is starting to enter the high school. So the high school is going to go up for the next several years, and then it'll kind of taper off as those students graduate. But this is a review of the last 4 years. The final page I include is charter schools and where kids who are attending charter schools. Because we've had a lot of discussion about where our kids are at. So last year, I started to keep track of where the kids were going if they were in charter schools. And so that is here for this year and for last year. What I've discovered, or what it looks like, is we have a few more kids at STEM and a few more kids at Nearstrand. But other than that, the total enrollment in the charter school has remained roughly the same. So we have a set of about 100 kids who are attending charter schools, but they're not necessarily kids leaving our school. They're just bumping around to the charter schools and deciding they might like STEM one year, they might like Blue Sky Online one year, and they might like some different Nearstrand one year. But for the most part, we're not really losing special ed students to the charter schools. It's just remaining about the same at about 100. So any questions about any of those that you have? I could talk about special education numbers
I mean, you
forever.
can see, Rob, I think the value of public education when you look at this chart and serving special education students that charter schools just are not serving the majority of
Right.
disabilities or diagnoses or
Yeah.
special ed kids.
And certainly I'm proud, it's Paraprofessional Recognition Week, so proud of all the support staff that we have in our schools, and our special ed teachers do an outstanding job, and I think we're doing good things for kids. And I don't know if it's a reflection, but the kids, special ed kids are staying here, so that's good news.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Thank you, Rob. That concludes our report, board members. Let's move on to item 9, other matters. Consider approval of the strategic plan advisor, Mr. Bruce Miles. And so, Mr. Sesker, I don't know if you want to dive in with the conversation Mr. Wolf and you and I had the other day, or?
Yeah, so we did a lot of reference check, and as Matt said earlier, he did a lot of work with both MSBA and Bruce Miles, and we put those side by side. Both are excellent resources for us, but we felt with the time right now, Bruce would be the logical choice. You've worked with Bruce. He is a little less expensive compared to MSBA, which also works well. He did say that he can start as early as April 6th. He does have a couple other dates, but I wanted to put that in your heads too. It would be an intense 4-day, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. I don't have hours or times yet or what's going to happen those days, but I asked him to get us on as early as possible. So at this time, John and Courtney, right? No, Carolyn. Who's making the recommendation? You and Chad. That's right. Sorry.
That's the next item. So
yeah, it's Monday still, right? Yeah, Chad and John are suggesting that we use as Bruce Miles as our strategic planning advisor. Sorry.
And I believe, I did visit with Gail Gilman at the MSBA conference, and she indicated it might be spring, late spring at best, and continuing the process through the summer, et cetera. So in discussion with that, and what Chad and I believe that what all hinges on the strategic plan of things we want to do and need in it to move forward, that at this time Bruce Miles would be our logical choice too.
The other piece that we have too that's going to help us, Matt, is going to be part of that whole process, and he's going to help with a lot of that communication piece.
I'm curious, when you say it's a 4-day, 4-session process, it's evening sessions? Is that?
I don't have those hours yet, so I'll get those. I'm assuming they're evenings, but let me get all the details. We just wanted to get those dates out there so you had them first, and then as we move across, or as we move down the line, I'll let you know.
So could I have a motion for approval of Bruce Miles for the strategic plan advisor?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ingrat. Discussion, further discussion or questions of us? Discussion?
I think it's great that we're getting started on this work. It's really important.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, board members. 9B is the consider approval of resolution 2015 appointing Jerry Robichaux to fill the board member vacancy. For a little background and discussion of that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Cavalier, if you'd like to share some things with the board.
Sure, I just have a couple notes here. As you know, John and I were the board subcommittee on the appointment process, and we've decided to propose that we appoint Dr. Jerry Robichaux for the open school board position. We carefully considered the resumes, letters of intent, and written responses to our questions before we made any recommendation, and we were very impressed with the group of people who chose to submit their names for consideration. We think the entire group would be excellent candidates for the school board, and we sincerely hope that the group of people who put their names out will consider running for office or stay engaged with the district in some other way. It is really encouraging that 6 people were willing and interested in serving the community and the schools. Mr. Bellingham last week personally contacted each candidate to share these sentiments and to thank them for putting their names forward. We decided to nominate Dr. Robichaud for the following reasons. Given the timing of the appointment, we felt that his past experience as a board member was valuable to have at this point as we head into budget cuts and strategic planning. Dr. Robichaud was also elected and then re-elected by the people of Faribault, leading us to believe that his renewed involvement in the board would have community support. Finally, he has stayed involved in district work through his participation with the facilities committee here at the district. All of the candidates had great skills, educations, and qualities, all of which suggested they would be strong contributors to the board, but these are the reasons why we decided to nominate Jerry. And again, we really do sincerely hope that the 5 other people who put their names forth will stay engaged with the district in some way and really, truly appreciate their willingness to serve and to step up and step forward at this time.
Courtney, I'll just add on a little bit, but in my calls to all of the applicants, the rich conversations that we had, it wasn't just, I'm sorry you didn't get the appointment. It was, how else can I help the district? How else can I help this community? I felt really, really good after conversing with all of the applicants and got a couple of intents to run from some of them. So this is, you know, I thought it was a very good process and excellent candidates, and I also want to thank them for putting their name forward. So any questions or anything that you have?
Well, I'll just add a couple of quick things. Number one, as this is my last term, I'm thrilled to hear that there are people with the intent to run, and particularly candidates that I was looking at. As I agree wholeheartedly that the candidates that I saw, there were quite a few candidates that I would have been very happy to appoint to the board now, and I'm excited if a number of them are considering running. That sounds fantastic. Also, the choice of Jerry Robichaud for me is a strong one. Jerry and I joined the board at the same time. I served with him for many years, and he was an outstanding choice to nominate. Now, I will wholeheartedly endorse that with my vote. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you for all the work as a subcommittee.
You're
And
welcome.
Speedy.
So for this is a resolution, so I will read the resolution, then ask for a
We have a
motion approving the resolution. So, Resolution 2015, filling school board vacancy by appointment. Whereas a vacancy exists in the office of school board member with a term expiring the first Monday in January 2021, and whereas the vacancy occurred more than 90 days prior to the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November in the year the vacancy occurred and prior to the 4th year of the vacant term, now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 656, State of Minnesota as follows. Pursuant to Minnesota Statutes, Section 123B.09, Subdivision 5B, Jerry Robichaud is hereby appointed to fill the vacancy and to serve the remainder of the unexpired term and until a successor is elected and qualified. The appointment shall be effective 30 days after the adoption of this resolution unless a valid petition to reject the appointee is filed with the school district clerk pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 123B.09 Subdivision 5BB within that 30-day time period. So motion to approve Resolution 2015 filling the school board appointment with Dr. Jerry Robichaud, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cavalier. All right, discussion. Laid it pretty well. Discussion. Last call for discussion or comments. Seeing none. All in favor of the...
It's resolution.
Oh, it's a resolution. Thank you very much. Caught me again. Let's have a, Ms. Treadway, if you would do a roll call, please.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Jason Ambrecht.
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway. Aye. John Bellingham.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. Next, let's move on to item 9C, consider approval of 2-year contract for Todd Sisker, Superintendent of Schools. And I would ask Ms. Yocum if you would come up, please, and do this for the board. Should have asked you before, I didn't. I assumed you were going to come up.
Okay, I'm getting my steps in.
Okay.
Well, I would say that Carolyn and I did meet with Nicole to review the contract, and we were happy that Mr. Sesker
Thank you.
accepted our contract. So I guess if the board has any questions, they could ask Carolyn and I or Nicole. Otherwise, I'd make a motion to approve the contract as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cavalier. Any discussion? So maybe Nicole, you could, I think part of the contract stipulates that we don't have to pay we don't have to pay Mr. Sesker's portion of TRA, and this saves the district some money. Would that be correct?
That's correct,
Okay,
yes.
and could dollar amounts like
Sure. So in the first year, it's just a little over $8,400. The second year, it's a little over $8,700. So there's a total of about $18,000.
Okay. I mean, with the TRA savings.
Yes.
Thank you. Very good. Anyone else have any questions? I thought they would have more, that's why I asked you to come up. They did not, so.
She gets her steps in.
Yes, there was one other savings, I'd like to just kind of mention. So when we did calculate out Mr. Sesker's contract, we assumed we were going to have a 5% increase in health insurance for year 2. This past week, we received our HITA bids back, and none of the amounts are public at this time, but we know that it will be an amount that will be under 5%. So we're not, so there will be an additional savings along that line. So initially, the contract was costed out at a 5% increase over a 2-year period. Now it's down to about 4.6% over 2 years.
Very good. I'd like to thank the group for the negotiating piece and your work, and Todd for agreeing with that. So if we have any more questions, comments? So we have a motion and a second in place. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion passes. Thank you, Nicole, for coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Now I can thank the board, so thank you very much. So I appreciate the work that you did.
All right, let's move on to item D. Consider approval to add a work session on Tuesday, February 18th at the district office. So I think Mr. Sesker already alluded to it. Because of budget reductions or budgetary concerns, we need that extra session to review things, go over things, et cetera. That pretty well sums it up.
It does.
Okay, so
So moved.
thank you, Yvette, for that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's a hard group to get a second. We have a second motion and a second, thank you.
Just a little discussion. It is a Tuesday night, just so you know.
Yes.
Yep, because we could not have the meeting on the Monday of President's Day.
That's great. Very good. Okay. Still at 5:30, that's what we have, great, okay. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 10A, student representative. I don't have one, but I would like to ask, because Mr. Wolf and I did talk with Mr. Sesker about that. We believe that we would like to ask the senior high administration to recommend a student to come forward, and we're going to be seated at the board. I think they would have a lot to offer, and if they don't want to stay through the whole meeting, we could put them first or something like that. I don't want to supersede what Chad is saying here, but I think it'd be very important for our student voice and things to have a representative here on the board. So
Yep, they are researching it right now
Okay.
as
I think that's an excellent idea, John, to have their report moved up
Absolutely.
to the top of the agenda, because I think that is really hard for the students often.
They need to get home and get to school, get to work on their schoolwork.
And, you know, it would be very valuable on a night like tonight when we talked about the iPads, Chromebooks, et cetera, to actually hear what a student is saying, thinking, you know, what they're thinking out there and things like that too. So, excellent. Okay, let's move on to school board members. Any reports from school board, anything you'd like to share? Carol?
3 of us attended the Minnesota State School Board Association convention in, January 10th, is that when we went?
14th, 15th,
14th.
16th.
Okay. And it was an outstanding convention, one in which I learned a great deal, and there were excellent sessions that we could choose what we would like to go learn more about, in addition to fantastic keynote speakers. The 2 sessions I attended were especially interesting to me around teacher retention, and then the research that promotes in the best way student achievement. And both of those pointed so very significantly to how we need to work with our teachers to help them feel as though they are making such a difference in the lives and achievement of our students. They are our front line, and how do we promote their sense of efficacy? So I thank the district for supporting us in going. It was an amazing opportunity.
Well, several of us attended the Martin Luther King breakfast. And it was, as always, it was a great event, but the student participation, now I wish I had this number in my head. Do you have the total number of students that submitted?
I don't remember what it was.
They submitted poems for judging, and there was, through every grade school, through all grades, so they had to end up giving first, second, third, and honorable mention awards to every student grade. Mr. Ingebrecht's daughter was the winner she was the winner at the high school, is that correct? Keynote speaker. So I'm not prepared to present, but I guess overall I want to say it was a great high level of student participation and staff participation at the event. And so I want to give a lot of credit to the Diversity Coalition, to our staff.
Virtues Project.
The Virtues Project did a presentation as well. They're trying to work cooperatively with us, and they added equity discussions after the breakfast, which was a way for people to sort of engage, I think, on what they heard and reflect, and maybe develop some action plans of their own. So it was a great event. Thank you.
That's great.
Jason or Courtney, you have anything?
Did you want to say something about the convention?
I'll wait till you guys are done, then I'll do my 2 cents.
I just wanted to echo Carolyn's sentiments about the conference. I really appreciate the chance to learn and connect with other school board members. I also had a really meaningful experience up there, and I did also attend the Phase 4 training, which is focused on policy and community engagement, so that was really helpful for me. I attended sessions on equity, diversity, poverty, and gender equity, so that was really informative, and fantastic keynote speakers that were really inspiring and completely reinforce the importance of the work our teachers do and our paras do in this district every day on the behalf of our students. So I echo Carolyn's thoughts about looking at teacher efficacy and ensuring that teachers know what a difference they're making in the lives of our kids. So thank you for the opportunity.
I also attended the MSBA conference. I'd like to thank the district for supporting. The sessions I went to were very rewarding and enriching. I went to the one with the Minnesota State High School League, getting an update on theirs. I went to some different ones on school funding and retention of teachers, recruitment of teachers, et cetera there. As a board member, I'd personally like to thank the paraprofessionals we have in the district on the Paraprofessional Recognition Week. Having a para in my classroom most of the time of my 36 years, they are invaluable. And the work they do with students is amazing, and I do believe we have a special group here in Faribault that work with our kids and our classroom teachers. So thank you so much. I'd also like to recognize, as the governor did today, the coaches and advisors in the state of Minnesota. The coaches and advisors of extracurricular activities we have here in Faribault is phenomenal. It's not just about wins and losses, it's teaching lifelong lessons and dedication and teamwork. And so as a former coach and advisor, I'd like to thank all those who put in countless hours of their time to work with kids, make them better, make their skills better, but probably most importantly, make them better people when they're done with their activity and their athletic sports. So I'd like to thank our coaches and advisors with that as well. So anything else from school board members? Mr. Sesker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I do want to say thank you to Jason for being an advisor. We want to make sure that we're reaching out as board members and as other administrative staff and everything else to the great leaders that we have. I really appreciate everything that you do as an advisor and as a coach for those kids, because they're learning a lot and they're doing a great job. So thank you very much. I also attended the MSBA conference. Again, it was a very good conference. The speakers, we had John Quinones. Is that how you pronounce his last name? Quinones. He is the, what is the name of the show again that he has?
What Would You Do?
What Would You Do? Yeah, you probably have seen that. Maybe you don't recognize it right now, but I'm sure you've seen it on TV. An excellent speaker. The other speaker that I thought was really interesting was Alan November, and talking about technology and how students are not using Google search appropriately. They're not doing it right. There are commands that I didn't know about that you actually, you can print out the list of commands in Google, and it can direct you to reliable spots if you're doing research. Wikipedia is not always the #1 resource for research, especially if it's something contradictory at Harvard or MIT or Luther College or St. Olaf. You can actually look at those different institutions and go directly to those areas of research and actually get valid research for those. But there's just pages of different ways you're supposed to search the internet. And then he had a couple of suggestions on some free online programming for students if they wanted to take some curriculum. And I know that that's one of the pieces that Ryan and Jamie are working on, to create a slot next year in that 7-period day so that kids can get online learning credits that are Faribault credits, not Blue Sky, not some of those other areas. But those are some excellent resources that he pointed out that I'm bringing back to cabinet. We've already talked about the retention. I mentioned that to Nicole. We're talking about a lot of different initiatives that MSBA has brought up that we bring back to our district and we share with our staff that are all very, very positive. So it's a great conference, and I really appreciate everything that we do. What else? Let's see. I did speak at the conference. It was the early slot on Friday morning when all the schools had canceled and everybody had gone home. But I actually presented with Don Lifto, and our topic was voter files and target structures. So I've been doing this superintendent gig for 20 years now, and out of those 20 years, I've had 8.5. I count the Goodhue when I was at the front end, and it wasn't on the end. 8.5 different levies that I've gone through. So half of my superintendent life has been trying to pass levies. But it was a good conference. We only had 7 or 8 people there, but it was still a good piece. I also want to say the Big 9 conference actually started the discussion with Keith Badger and the other activities directors to do the thank you to the coaches and advisors. So you can actually thank the Big 9 to bring that to the State High School League. We actually didn't find out about it till last week, and we had talked about it a long time ago, and then lo and behold, here's this proclamation coming out that the Big 9 actually started that whole process with. So pretty cool cool that we're doing some of these things. Other than that, everything's going very well at the school. We're all working hard, and we really appreciate everything that everybody does, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zesker. Move on to item 11, the dates to remember. Tuesday, February 4th is the policy meeting, 3:30. Monday, February 10th, a work session here at the district office, 5:30. Monday, February 17th is a finance committee meeting.
I think we got to reschedule on that for.
Oh, yeah, it has to be the 18th. We just found out from MSBA.
So we cannot
Finance
have-
is the February 18th, yeah.
February
Sorry
18th,
about that.
thank you.
Yep.
And then Tuesday, also on the 18th, the extra work session we just approved here at the district office. There, notice that canceled the Thursday, February 20th, the Community School Advisory Meeting at Jefferson. And then, of course, a regular board meeting on Monday, February 24th.
And is there a district advisory meeting on the 10th, Ryan?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that one I missed, right?
No, it just wasn't
Okay.
here.
Very good. Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to item 12. We're going to go into closed session to discuss negotiations. So could I have a motion to go into closed session, please, to discuss negotiations?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Treadway, for the motion, and the second, Mr. Engret. Any discussion? Discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We will now go into closed session.